Well, welcome to the next video in this series as we're looking at the backgrounds of Daniel. This video and the next couple, we're going to look at the structure of the book of Daniel. Daniel is a very intricately put together book. There's multiple ways in which the author, Daniel himself, has put together this book so that we might understand different themes, different reasons for why this book was put together, what he wanted to communicate to the original hearers. Remember that there's an organic connection between what the original hearers would have understood and understand the meaning of, and what we are to understand as the meaning of this book. The very first structure that we see in the book of Daniel is the structure of genre. Genre is how we differentiate between the book of Joshua and the book of Revelation, or the book of Genesis and the book of Titus. These are different genres that are at play, and Daniel is set up in two distinct genres. The first 6 chapters, the first half of the book, is set up to be narrative. The narrative genre wherein we see history recorded. There's particularities about it that aren't necessarily found in poetry, you could say. And so we're not to understand it as symbolic or metaphorical. There may be parts like Nebuchadnezzar's dream where we're supposed to understand that, but it is primarily, the first 6 chapters, narrative. Again, primarily narrative, not entirely, but primarily narrative. This is where we see all of the main stories of the book of Daniel that are in children's Bibles that you might have heard in Sunday school growing up. These are the famous stories that we know about. Nebuchadnezzar's dream of 4 kingdoms, the statue, and all of a sudden a stone comes and actually shatters this kingdom. And Daniel has the interpretation of the dream. Then we see the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego thrown into the fiery furnace. Then we see Nebuchadnezzar go off and live in insanity as like an animal, where his hair grows like feathers, his nails like talons. And so we see that. Then we see the handwriting on the wall in chapter 5. And then in chapter 6, Daniel gets thrown in the lion's den. So these are the narrative parts of Daniel. The second 6 chapters are prophecy. Now, Daniel is considered to be a prophet, even though his book here is within all of the prophecy literature. In the Hebrew Bible, it's actually in the writings or in the history section. Daniel, though, is considered to be a prophet, not because he was a covenant prosecutor like most of the other prophets were, where they were going and saying, Israel, you've disobeyed the covenant, you've broken covenant with God, repent and turn back. Daniel doesn't really do that as much. He more tells the future. These are the 2 different kinds of prophets or prophecies that can be made as, hey, you're disobeying God, turn back. It's actually the majority of the prophets. Daniel takes another angle because he's given visions here in the second part that predict the future. And in a lot of ways, some of them are talking about near deliverance. Most are talking about future, far future deliverance, in which the Ancient of Days or the Son of Man actually sets up his kingdom. And we see that in the coming of Jesus. And then in his final consummation, we see the final and full deliverance of God because he reigns. So the second half of the book of Daniel, it's interesting because some of it we know are not intended for those who were living in Daniel's time, because it actually says, Daniel, seal up this book. Seal it up because these aren't going to come true for the next little bit. Seal it up so that it might be delivered later on. So this is the first structure that we see in the book of Daniel. Let's go to the next structure in the next video.